Welcome back to the Running Wine Mom podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Cieslinski, aka the Running Wine Mom. Today, we're tackling one of the most overwhelming experiences for moms, breastfeeding and breast pumping. Joining us is Angela Lashbrook, a senior multimedia content creator at Consumer Reports. With over a decade of experience in media and background in covering health and baby products, Angela has dedicated her work to helping families make informed decisions. She's covered everything from strollers to coffee makers and now breast pumps. In this episode, we'll explore Consumer Reports' latest evaluations on the best breast pumps, wearable options, and tips to make the process easier for new moms. Whether you're just starting out or looking to improve your breastfeeding journey, this episode is packed with helpful advice. So without further ado, welcome, Angela.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
I'm excited to have you. Before we get into all of the breast pump information, we start each episode with our wine, and win of the week segment. This is where we share our favorite bottle of wine, vent about something that's been bothering us, and celebrate our recent victories. So grab a glass, take a deep breath, and let's get started. So Angela, what is your wine WINE of the week?
My wine WINE of the week is, and you'll have to forgive me because I don't know how to pronounce the maker, but it's a Chocolina, which is a Basque wine. And it's called the Amastoy Rubentus. And
Ooh.
I'm sure I'm butchering that. But it is a 2023 rosé. I really like lightly fizzy wines, but wines that aren't like properly sparkling. So this is just absolutely delightful. If you can find a Chocolina at your wine store, you should get it, whether it's rosé or not.
Ooh, I've never tried that, and I will add it to my list because I love me some wine. So, and I like rosé.
Yeah, it's amazing. I had it like for the first time last year, I think, and I've been looking everywhere for it, and it is kind of hard to find. I live in a city that doesn't have very good wine stores, so I'm always on the lookout.
Awesome. So what is your WHINE of the week?
Well, it's back to school season, which, and it's, for me, it's my first because my baby is 10 months old. So we have been sick basically for the past month. But the win of that side of the equation is that we are not sick right now. So I'm going to take it.
Yes. So is that your win of the week, or do you have more wins of the week?
That's the win. I am really banking on the fact that nobody at the moment, knock on wood, is ill, as far as I know.
I know. It's like a never-ending cycle. It's like baby gets sick, mom gets sick, dad gets sick, baby gets sick, mom gets sick, dad gets sick, or however it is in the household. Like grandma gets sick, because it's just never-ending battle. And so I hope that hopefully that's the most that you have for your school year. The immune system is now built up, right?
Oh my God, yeah.
So I always like to ask my guests, what is one significant challenge you have successfully navigated shaping your journey to where you are today?
So I would say, I wouldn't say this is the most significant challenge I've ever navigated, but it is a recent one, is the birth of my baby a year ago. It was just everything went sideways, and basically, it went from, I'm going to have a beautiful epidural-free birth with music, and it's just going to be absolutely perfect. And then it ended up being like a 4-day long situation with an epidural, preeclampsia, and a C-section and a NICU stay. So, like everything, so much of what could happen didn't. But I think the thing that it really solidified for me is how the support that I had gathered around me for that situation, for that birth, made it so that it was just a difficult experience and not a traumatic one. So I think that's like, support is actually super, super important when it comes to these parenting trials and tribulations that I'm sure I'm going to be facing over and over for the next 18 years plus. And I would recommend hiring a doula who you adore, because she basically made that entire experience bearable and like a
Wow.
funny
Yeah.
memory.
That's really great because you do hear so many women who go through similarly to what you've explained, and it is traumatic and not just a scary or, it stays with them. And not that this isn't staying with you forever, because it is something that's very significant, but in a different way than many do, because specifically of support, which is so important. And really you're right, through all 18 years of parenthood plus, it is
Yeah.
the only way to get through. So I'm very happy for you that you had a great doula, because my birth experience was not as intense, but I read all the books about doing the pain free um, epidural free. I mean, not pain free,
Mm-hmm.
epidural free, a natural everything. And then my daughter was breech, and I had a marginally inserted cord in my placenta. So flipping was actually like trying to flip her was very dangerous to do. So I
Mm-hmm.
just did the C-section, which was fine. I had a great experience with it, but it's just different. Nobody talks about how you make this plan in your head and you plan all this stuff, and then it's like nature's like, nope, just kidding. This is not how it's going to be.
Yeah, I have anxiety, and I'm a control freak, as
Hmm.
I'm sure that's not that unusual, but I'm so glad that like I was able to get to a point in my life where I could be like, okay, this is something that I just have to trust is going to be okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like maybe, I don't know, like you never know what's going to happen. Most of the time it's going to be fine.
Yeah. But having that support is seriously so important, because that you were prepared going in to have a non-epidural birth, and coming out having a C-section is a totally different thing that you were not prepared necessarily. I mean, maybe you had ideas of what would happen, but I know like with mine, I knew I was going to have a scheduled C-section because Willow was breech. And so I mean, there was like 3 weeks where I'm like just reading everything and looking up all this stuff. So I can't imagine just going through all of that and then having to be like, okay, wait, what? This was not how I prepared.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I had no indication that I would be having a C-section, so it wasn't something that I had given too much thought to. But also, one of my good friends had unexpected C-section, so at least I had like an awareness that it was possible. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the thing that was so great about my doula is, and this isn't something that you can necessarily control for, but if you are looking for one, you can ask, is she knew the hospital staff very well. And they really liked her and trusted her. She's
Hmm.
delivered so many births at that hospital. So, if you're hiring a doula, like you can ask, like, what's your relationship like with the people at the hospital? Do you like them? Do they like you? Like, because that made a big difference. It was like a party, kind of.
Wow, that's really, and I hope, my listeners are, taking that. Definitely, that's a really important piece of advice, because you're right. If your doula walks into a hospital that maybe they don't know, or maybe they don't like them, it could be a totally different outcome. But that's probably also very relaxed, made you feel a little more relaxed, that not only did you have your doula, but you had the medical staff supporting your doula, because they know that she makes the right choices, which is great.
Yeah,
That's
totally. And
awesome.
I don't want anyone to like be afraid if their doula is new or young or whatever. Like, they might be a totally amazing person and they're trained in this, and they probably are. It's just a plus.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Awesome. All right. Well, so the running wine mom, we start with a little fitness. What is your favorite way to stay active?
I love yoga. I have a local yoga studio. For most of my life, I did yoga at home because I don't know, like I doing downward dog in front of a bunch of other people made me nervous, but I love this place. Um, it keeps me sane. God bless.
That's that's awesome. And yoga is so important in motherhood to just have that time to kind of, well, for yourself, any kind of exercises, but just it's a different kind of relaxing for your body, which is great. And the one thing I didn't realize with my first daughter was like how much like bending down and picking up that I would do with her, and how bad my lower back became because of it. So the yoga is was so helpful to just like make me feel normal again.
Yeah, so it's funny you mention that because this past week, I mean, the past month, we've been sick or occasionally traveling, so I haven't been able to go to yoga. And I pulled a muscle in my back picking my baby up the other day. Like, that's
Yeah.
exactly what happened. And so I went to yoga and I asked for modifications, and it made me feel so much better inside and outside, which is a cliche term, but it's exactly how I feel.
No, that's the perfect term for it. So along the same lines, how does maintaining your fitness routine contribute to your understanding between mental health and physical fitness?
So I would say it is crucial. It's totally non-negotiable. For a long time, I didn't understand just how critical movement was to my mental health. Now, if I'm super busy or sick, as I just mentioned that I was, and I can't work out, I can feel a lot of my old habits and like thought processes coming back. So a lot of like my disordered eating or my general anxiety, they just come rearing back. So if I keep myself moving, whether that's walking or that's yoga or whatever, that's what it mostly is. It's a lot easier to keep my mental health in check.
Yes, that's so true. Very important. So the Running Mind Mom, we next talk about parenthood. Tell us about your family.
It is me, my little 10-month-old, my husband, and our dog, Gordo, who is a German Shepherd Husky mix, probably.
And how did Gordo do with the new addition to the baby?
He did great. During pregnancy, he was pretty like confused. He knew something was going on, but he didn't know what it was. So he was very anxious, but now he loves my baby. He sleeps in the baby's room.
Oh,
He'll curl up against the crib when the baby goes to sleep. It's very sweet.
oh, that's so sweet. What were you least prepared for in parenthood?
I have recency bias here, but I would say introducing and feeding solids is way more complex than I thought it was, and I have more anxiety about it than I thought I would. The questions are constant, like, am I feeding him enough? Like, will I be able to get him off formula, around when I'm supposed to? Is he going to be drinking milk from a bottle forever? Like, these are questions that I have in my head all the time, and it is taking some like positive self-talk to make sure that I don't spiral when my kid just throws his food on the floor instead of eats it.
Well, food is fun before one. That's what everybody said to me, which made me feel a lot better. Food is fun before one, and every child will eventually eat, whether it's whether it's a little or a lot. They're and just when you think you have it figured out, they'll start hating what you make anyway, and you'll have to figure something else out. That's what I found with my toddlers. So
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't
I'm
get too
like.
comfortable in the things that he does appear to like right now, which is fig bars and broccoli.
Oh, there you go. That's great. Hopefully they'll that will stick, for a while. But I swear it's like we'll give something at dinner and my kids will love it. And then be like, all right, you're gonna get all of this stuff for them. And then the next time you make it, they're like, I don't like this. What?
Yeah,
You just
that happened with us.
loved it.
He recently loved anchovies, which was surprising to me, and I was like, "Oh my god, like what a win. He loves anchovies." And then I gave him some yesterday, and again, he looked at it and then he threw it on the floor. I was like, "Well, so much for those expensive anchovies I bought my baby."
Yeah. Oh, he'll get there though, I swear. And again, in that phase, you really can't see out of that phase. You just are like, I remember that like this is never gonna end. This is gonna be forever. And like you just said, my child's gonna be 15 drinking from a bottle because they're not gonna eat what I give them. And I swear it gets better.
It's good to hear because social media makes it so much worse too. On Instagram, it's all like all these, food parenting Instagrams, and they're like, are you feeding your child too much sugar? Or like, you need to make sure your child has like 3,000 foods. I don't know, like, for example. And I'm just like, oh my God.
It's information overload. I think the biggest thing that always, kind of calmed my mind was that this has been going on for thousands of years before the internet. So if your parent or close friend didn't tell you, then you wouldn't know about it anyway. So I'm like,
Absolutely.
okay, well.
Yeah. And like, I'm also like, yeah, I didn't eat anything until I became an adult, and now I'll eat almost anything. So there is hope.
Yeah. There is, yes, and you're doing a great job with whatever way they eat. That's what you just know that whatever works for you is the right way, is what I think is the best advice for that. So, what do you think your parenting style is?
So my baby's not even one, so it's difficult to say. With the exception of the copious anxiety I have around his eating, I think I'm in general pretty relaxed. So, so much of taking care of a baby is just giving them a bottle and changing their diaper, and like taking them to their pediatrician appointment. So I think for the most part, I'm sometimes a little too relaxed, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's great. Relaxed is good. And what is one piece of advice that you would give to other parents?
The advice I would give it stems off the problem that I was just talking about a second ago, which is stay off TikTok and stay off Reels. I can't believe how quickly and easily I was fed like sensationalistic, unscientific, fear-mongering parenting content. Just flipping through a couple days ago, and it's so easy for that to happen, even when you're a discerning, like, educated, thoughtful person. So just don't look at that stuff if you can avoid it.
Yeah, it's really overwhelming. I think one of the things that I've found is that I would search for specific things that I would want. So, like, say it was about like how to feed your baby peaches or something. But other than that, if it was anything else, I'd just like scroll through. It's like, because then all of a sudden it'd be how to feed your baby, how to eat, eat this. And then it's overwhelming because you're like, well, this one said I need to cut it into small pieces. And this one said I need to cut it into big pieces. And which one is it? So I'm just like, you got to just scroll through. So I agree with you. Keep scrolling.
Yeah, like just don't even go there. Like I found some pretty crazy stuff really fast. Like,
Yeah,
I wasn't even looking for it.
And it's not vetted for, anybody can sit there and say they're an expert, and they don't need to necessarily have the credentials for it. And there are a lot of great resources out there which have helped, but there's also a lot that are just not helpful. And just because you had a baby or fed a baby does not make you necessarily an expert in that area per se.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think when you go and follow someone specific that you trust, I think you have a better chance than if you're just scrolling through TikTok and getting random people the algorithm thinks you'll be interested in.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So true. Well, we're going to kind of continue feeding, but breastfeeding. We're going to start with a little breastfeeding challenge and support. It's so overwhelming for new moms, any kind of feeding. But what do you think some common challenges women find when they start breastfeeding when starting out?
So, judging from the research that I have done, my mom friends and my own experience, the craziest thing is just the amount of information and the amount of conflicting information that's out there. When I was the challenges for me with breastfeeding and like the confusion began when I was in the hospital. I was delirious. I was exhausted. I had been given magnesium, which they give to people with preeclampsia, and it makes you feel really drunk. So I just was like totally out of it. And I woke up and I was put on a breast pump because my baby was in the NICU and I couldn't feed him. And every nurse and every lactation consultant, to be clear, all of whom were genuinely wonderful people, they all gave me different advice. And I think what that taught me, and what it's important to remember in this particular field, is that there's not that much research, and a lot of the wisdom that you get from people is learned from like years of anecdotes versus stories. Years of anecdotes versus studies is what I mean to say. So like one person may have seen one thing, one person may have seen another. It's not necessarily clinically validated information. So if someone tells you to do something and it doesn't work for you, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It just means there's probably another way that will work.
Yes. And I think that's really important as well, because I think if you are talking to one person, you think that there is only one way, especially if you don't know. And as a new mom, you're just trusting all of these other people to tell you what to do, but then you don't realize that, I mean, there's 8 billion people on the earth. Like, we can't all be, have the same response to everything. So there's an answer, and that is something really great to remember. How do you think that a good breast pump could alleviate some of the stress new mothers experience when breastfeeding is difficult or painful?
There are two main ways, one which might seem more obvious than another. The first way I would say is if your baby is struggling to latch, a pump will help you keep up your supply when you are trying to figure out how to help your baby latch. That's assuming, of course, like you want to continue breastfeeding, and you don't need to if you don't want to. Just feel like people need to hear that many, many times because it is 100% true. A pump, though, apart from just like helping you and your baby form a breastfeeding relationship, can also diffuse the responsibility that you have of feeding your baby. So, if you're pumping, it allows your partner, if you have a partner, to also be involved in feeding. And that can be a huge load off your shoulders, especially once your baby is no longer waking up, multiple times a night to be fed, where they're sleeping through the night and they're, eating more during the day and less at night.
Yeah, that's fair. And the partner help is very important for us all to function and get some sleep. So that is definitely a great tip. What role do you think Consumer Reports plays in maybe educating and supporting new moms in their breastfeeding journey?
So we want to help new parents be informed without having to dive down any rabbit holes. So basically, we will dive down the rabbit holes for you, because it is messy and crazy down there. When it comes to breastfeeding specifically, there's so many breast pumps, and we wanted to just sort through the noise and make it easier for breastfeeding parents or pumping parents to choose one. It's really great that we have so many choices, but as we've discussed, it's super overwhelming, especially when you have like a million other things when you're pregnant, and like you have to get the nursery ready, and you have to prepare your hospital bag, and you have to get childcare like set in order if that's what you're going to be doing. So we just want to like basically take one responsibility from you and say, hey, you don't have to like go crazy researching this. We've done that. Here are a few options that you can consider.
That's great. So could you walk us through the process Consumer Reports uses to evaluate the breast pumps, and what criteria do you think is most important in the assessment?
So we, for breast pumps, we used a testing process called Test X. It's basically an internal term, but what it means is we have a team that writes surveys, collects a group of users, like a pretty large group of users, a few dozen generally, who actually own and have used the products. We make sure that they have evidence that they can present to us that they have actually used and regularly do use these products. And then we survey them on what they think of these various products. And in this specific case, it was breast pumps.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. So, what wearable breast pumps are gaining popularity? What did Consumer Reports find regarding their effectiveness compared to traditional pumps?
So, experts told us that in general, wearable pumps, at least where we are in the innovation that we have and like the inventions that we have so far, they're not as efficient as traditional pumps. So, if you are going to be exclusively pumping, you probably wouldn't want to rely on a wearable, or even if you're going to be pumping really frequently. Wearable breast pumps are like a convenience product, generally speaking. You want to be using them a little less often than you would use like a standard electric pump.
And among the electrical pumps that Consumer Reports tested, which ones stood out for comfort and efficiency, and why? What were your findings with those?
So we found that the Spectra S2 is pretty easy to use, it's comfortable, and it's efficient, and it's actually the one that I ended up getting. It
Same. I use that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like an industry standard, and it seems like it just has maintained its reputation. I don't think it's the newest or the fanciest, but it just seems like it is, like it kind of gets the basics down. It has a nightlight, which like don't underestimate how critical that can be when you're pumping at 11 p.m. and you don't want to turn the light on because your baby is sensitive to light. Our users also liked how customizable it was. You could lower the suction if your breasts are sore, and it's pretty quiet also, but it does make a noise.
Yeah. That noise, it's so funny as you're like saying it, the noise like came back in my mind. I'm like, oh my goodness, I forgot about it. That went back in my mind.
It is weird. It's like a weird like whoosh thing noise that you'll never forget.
No, you won't. For moms on a budget, what affordable pumps did you find that still offer great functionality?
So all the pumps that we looked at kind of ranged between $100 to $300 in terms of like the electric ones. The wearables get a lot more expensive, but most people should not be buying, most Americans who are insured should not be buying their breast pump out of pocket. The ACA mandates that private insurance pays for breast pumps for birthing and breastfeeding people. That includes a lot of stuff like accessories that are necessary, lactation consultants. So I would recommend during pregnancy, not after, not when you're stuck in, the dredges of postpartum, but before, calling your insurance provider, see what they cover, and get your OB or your midwife to write you a prescription, and then pick out your breast pump from there. And probably you won't have to spend too much money depending on your insurance.
Yeah, I think with mine, I definitely like the Spectra was free, and I think I ended up getting the Willow for my son, which is funny because my daughter's name is Willow, but I got the Willow wearable for Parker because I had already had the Spectra, and I think it was like maybe $75 that I had to pay for that. So it was nice to have both options for those, but it was definitely something that I didn't know about before. I mean, I did find out before I had the babies, but prior to that, I didn't know that insurance companies covered that. So that was really important.
Yeah, it's I mean, like, I don't think they make it obvious that this is something that they cover. So you do kind of have to seek this stuff out. But I mean, yeah, I saved like, I don't know, $150 or $144 or however much the Spectra is now.
Yeah. And then, so in addition to all of this, we have manual pumps. They're often kind of seen as a backup pump, which I also had one of those that I could never really figure out how to use. But what are the strengths and limitations of using a manual pump versus the electric?
So, again, this is my experience, but I only had really good success using a manual pump. Me and the electric pump, we didn't vibe. We weren't, we didn't get along. But the manual pump
Yeah.
got a lot of like kind of crazy amounts of milk I got out of the manual pump. I had the Lancino. You can get them at the pharmacy or on Amazon. Be careful when you shop on Amazon. Make sure that you're buying from a trusted seller, because there's a lot of junk products on Amazon. But yeah, they work really surprisingly well for a lot of people. And the downside is pretty obvious. Like, it gets exhausting to sit there pumping for however long. And if you were exclusively pumping, you certainly, I mean, not certainly, I can't speak for everybody else, but you probably wouldn't want to use a manual pump. But I would take it to hair appointments, for example, so that I didn't have to carry around my electric pump when I was away from my baby. You could take it traveling. It's just so much easier than the carrying around the electric pump. And it just, for some people, it just works better for their breasts.
Yeah, when I went to I had to actually go back to the hospital with Willow, with my daughter, and they used the manual, and it got an insane amount of milk out for me. But then literally when I got home, I was like, this is not working. I can't use it. So I tried a few times, and I just stuck with the regular pump. But I know that so many people talk about how great it works for them.
Yeah, I mean, I would say in the grand scheme of how much a lot of pregnancy and baby products cost, it's pretty inexpensive. So I would recommend just getting one, just because you really don't know until you start pumping or breastfeeding how things are going to work for you. And if you have options, that will make it a less stressful experience.
Yeah. Did your research show any breast pumps well suited for moms of premature babies or those needing maybe a more hospital grade option?
So the term hospital grade is not like an FDA approved or regulated phrase. So as a marketing term, it's pretty meaningless. It's just something that,
Okay.
yeah. So, but that said,
I'm like, I did
hospitals,
not know that.
yeah, I think, I mean, a lot of, there's this kind of terminology everywhere. And I mean, how would people know? But your hospital should have what's known as multi-user pumps, which, is a pump that the pregnant birthing person used before you got to the hospital. And it's the one that they're going to use after you leave. And those are pretty strong. Those are good for if your baby is in the NICU, if you need to, get your supply going. I used a Medela, I believe, when I was in the hospital and my baby was in the NICU. And if your baby is going to be in the NICU for a while, you might be able to rent one of those from the hospital itself. I would recommend talking to a hospital lactation consultant who's familiar with the breast pump that they use and with other breast pumps, to see if they think you should rent one or if you can just use the one that you purchased during pregnancy.
Yeah, that's great. And then the next thing that I wanted to talk was about the LV Stride and the Mom Cozy real quick. Was there any surprising findings in your reviews, especially regarding those newer models? As everyone was talking about the LV Stride when I was, or maybe that's the one I had. I don't know why I thought there was a Willow. I think I had the LV Stride. I can't remember now. It was not that long ago. Or the Mom Cozy. There's so much. How do you know what to pick, or with all the newer models coming out?
So I think one thing to know is that the innovation in this category is To this point, pretty minimal. So, like, you're probably not going to be able to like buy your way out of the difficulty that can be pumping. I remember when I mentioned this on another interview recently, but my husband and I were like getting ready to have the baby, and my husband was like, "We're gonna get you the best possible breast pump that you can get. We will spare no price, like anything. We will spend any money to make sure that this works for you." And our friend, who is a dad and a tech reporter, was like, and he has, edited and written stories about this. He was like, you're not going to find what you're looking for. So I think that like, there's not a magic pump, like there's just the pump that works for you. And I hope that changes. I hope that they do invent a magic breast pump. As somebody who didn't like
Yeah.
pumping at all, but we're not there yet.
I know. That's what I wanted, is the magic breast pump. And that was something I feel like so many moms want. It's just, okay, well, what's going to be the easiest way and the best way to get this done for my kid? And it's, with all the technology, like you said, it's there and they have a lot of things, but for some people, some things work and other people, it doesn't work for them. So it's just something to, you're right, remember in the process of it all. So in your opinion, what do you think the biggest misconceptions around breastfeeding and pumping are?
I think there's this idea that, and I mean, I had this, and I know a lot of other people had this as well, that it's super easy and always going to be beautiful and perfect, and you and your baby are going to bond, and your baby's going to get tons of milk, and he's going to become this fat, chubby little cherub off of your breast milk alone. That might not happen, and it doesn't mean it's not worth trying. But I think you don't have to do it if you don't want to do it. I weaned my baby at around 4.5, 5 months, I think. When I went back to work, I just wasn't able to keep up with the pumping schedule when I was at work and my baby was at daycare. The pump just didn't really work very well for me. I could never, like I said, I could never vibe with it. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to do formula. And I'm really glad I did. And he and I have a great relationship. We have a great feeding relationship. My husband is able to have a great feeding relationship, and I don't regret it at all. And I just don't kill yourself trying to make it work if you don't want to make it work. You don't have to.
That is really great advice. And it is just the pressure of motherhood, so many different things, but the feeding is the breastfeeding is such a big one. And even like the fed is best used to kind of bother me, because it was like, well, fed is best, well, you're just doing the other option of formula, and so you're okay. But it was still like a weird feeling for me after I kind of stopped for some reason. And the mom guilt is there. But then once, like you just said, when you're on the other side, and I'm a high school phys ed teacher, I could literally not tell you one child who was breastfed or one child who was formula fed. I don't know what kid ate solids at, age 6 months or, not till age 5. I have no idea with any of that. I just see how they are now. And that's something that we were saying, in the moment you have this new baby and you think you have to have everything perfectly for them, but just doing your best is what is the best, I think.
Yeah. And also, like, take care of yourself. You're not a vehicle for your child, for your child's future. Like, you are your own person too. And if you don't enjoy it, or it hurts or whatever, like, your kid will be okay. Just make sure, like, they're eating.
I love that. That's great advice. And I think that's a great way to end it, because I think you've answered so many questions, and leaving us on that note is such a great way to kind of wrap it all up. That's wonderful. So, So that's going to bring us to the end of another episode of The Running Wine Mom. Thank you, Angela, for your wonderful insights and information. Again, whether you're navigating the early days of breastfeeding or just looking for the right tools to make your pumping journey smoother, remember there is no one size fits all solution, and it's okay to seek help and explore options. A big thank you to Angela for sharing her expertise and the important work Consumer Reports is doing to support new moms. If you'd like to learn more about their breast pump evaluations or read Angela's latest articles, be sure to check out Consumer Reports online. I also have a special code for you all today that will take $10 off your annual membership. So go to cr.org/therunningswinemom to sign up. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it. You can follow me on Instagram at @therunningswinemom_. And Angela, where can the listeners find you?
You can find me on Consumer Reports in the baby section and the home section, and just about everywhere, all over the website. So please come by.
Wonderful. And I will link the articles that Angela has written about breast pumps and all the other great things that she has been doing over at Consumer Reports. So thank you, Angela, for this wonderful interview.
Thanks so much for having me.
So thank you, listeners, for joining us today. Remember, you are strong, you are capable, and you are all amazing. Until next time, keep running, keep sipping, and keep embracing the joy of motherhood. Cheers, and I will be back next Tuesday.